Before the story begins, I want you to hear me clearly. Do not miss the final minutes. What you think you understand will shift, and if you blink, you'll miss the turn that makes everything make sense. Watch this video until the last word. Chapter 1: The Dead Signal. I got the call close to midnight, when the world is quiet enough to mistake the hum of power lines for a whisper you can't make out. The number came up as the station, my father's station, though it had been off the air for years. I stared at the screen long enough to watch my breath fog it. Then I answered. "Come," said a voice I hadn't heard in 3 years. It was my cousin, Grant. He didn't bother with hello. "I need you at the tower. Don't bring anyone. And when you arrive, whatever you hear behind the transmitter door, don't speak back." Static filled the line like the ocean pressed to a shell when the call ended. It had been nearly a decade since I'd been in that squat brick building 15 miles outside town, where my father sat nights nursing the signal and calling to work. His voice had been a kind of weather, moving through people without asking permission. When he died, the switch went silent and stayed that way. I told myself I wasn't going out there. Then I was driving, the old road a crease in the dark that the headlights ironed out, every fence post a metronome marking time to a song I didn't want to remember. The red aircraft beacon on the tower blinked slow and steady, a lighthouse pole saying I was almost home or almost lost. Grant was waiting outside in a coat too thin for the cold, smoking a cigarette down to its stitched filter. He looked worse than I remembered. Eyes red, beard grown wild, skin sallow in the sodium glow from a single security light. When he saw me, relief moved across his face like an animal in a thicket. "You came," he said, and if he smiled, it was the kind you can't keep. "I'm here," I said. "What's wrong with your phone?" He ignored the question, ground the cigarette under his heel, and gestured to the door. I caught something. Like a raccoon. He grinned at that, ugly and brief. I wish. Chapter 2: The Door That Humps. Inside, the station smelled like dust and stale coffee. My father's old swivel chair sat crooked before the mixer board, still wearing the indentation of a man who warmed it for 20 winters. The red on-air sign above the doorway flickered with a stubborn life it wasn't wired for. Every instrument, every meter, every glass relic looked like it was waiting for him to come back. Grant moved with tense efficiency, like he walked the same path 100 times. Hands finding light switches, keys, and heavy bolts in the dark, not so much turning them as appeasing them. He led me down the narrow hall past the record library and old ad copy racks to the transmitter room at the back, a place that always felt too hot even in winter. The door to the room wasn't the flimsy office kind we'd had when I was a kid. This one was steel, patched with makeshift welding scars, heavy as a bank vault. Chains crossed it at angles, overkill upon overkill. One chain looped through drilled holes and a second ran through eye bolts sunk into the wall. The paint around the frame had bubbled, like it had been set near a fire long ago, cooled, and then forgotten. Grant had taped something to the door, a yellowed strip of masking tape with 3 words scrawled in marker, "Do not answer." Beneath that, in smaller letters, was a date from 2 weeks earlier. The room around us hummed with electricity. Static tickled the hairs on my arms. The air was warmer here, and my breath stopped fogging. I could hear something behind the door, a sound not unlike a radio tune between stations, the soft hiss that seems to be empty until you realize how loud it is. "What did you catch?" I asked. "It called itself 100 different names," Grant said. So I stopped using any of them. "It's not a raccoon." Behind the door, a voice rose out of the hiss like a swimmer breaking the surface. My father's voice. He said my name once, calm and certain, like he'd known I'd be here all along. My whole body went cold. It wasn't the memory of him. It was him. The cadence. The little hook at the end of a sentence like he was lifting it out of your hands. The laugh he put in a word that didn't need it. "Don't talk to it," Grant said, his own voice thin now. "Not a word. It can stand 1,000 silences. It can't stand being ignored." How could it sound like him? I asked, even though I knew the answer. Radio waves bring you anything they want. This was a place for voices that don't ask permission. Grant swallowed. "Do you remember the night the tornado missed town and tore up the Ridge Road? Do you remember your father's broadcast? He told everybody where to go, how to duck, where to hide." I nodded, my mouth tasting like pennies. "I used that voice to bait it," Grant said. "I opened a crack, just a crack, and then I shut it. It's in there. You lured whatever this is with my father's voice. Grant's eyes didn't leave the door. It would have come anyway. I just invited it into a room with locks. Chapter 3, Proof of Life. You don't believe me, Grant said. I wouldn't either. He set down a battered tape recorder on a milk crate and hit play. The tape warbled. His voice, days of it, sped and chopped into a collage. Sometimes he was talking to the door, sometimes he was silent, and sometimes the tape spat a voice not human in pitch or rhythm. It didn't growl or roar. It asked questions. It told jokes that didn't start and didn't end. It knew the names of people who had died this year and last, and it knew what they had said when no one else was there to hear them. Then the phone rang. It was the old landline mounted on the wall opposite the door. We'd ripped that phone out after the storm of '02 took down the line. It shouldn't have been able to ring. It did anyway, a bright plastic trilling that almost sounded cheerful. Grant let it ring until it sounded impatient. He lifted the receiver, didn't say anything, then handed it to me, pressing it to my ear despite the way I leaned away. I didn't speak. I heard wind across a field. I heard a choir in a church halfway through a hymn. I heard a doctor telling a woman it's a boy, it's a girl, it's both, it's neither. I heard my father, closer, clearer. He said a thing only he would know, the name he called me at 6, when I fell asleep under the console, and he had to step carefully in the dark not to crush my fingers. Don't, Grant said again as my lips parted. Please. I lowered the phone. You can't possibly know it isn't a man, I said, my voice slower than my thoughts. Locked in there. Hungry. Sick. How long have you kept it? You can't keep someone like that. Grant gestured to the door. Would a man fog the radio bands from here to the state line? Did a man make the frequency meter spin at a dead station? He pointed at the oscillating needle. It was jittering between zeros like something breathed on it. Your father had a rule. Never go in when the beacon glows. He didn't know what for, but I think the rule had a brain behind it. Behind the door, my father's voice softened. He asked about my mother's grave. He wanted to know if I'd ever gotten around to fixing the porch swing that squealed in damp weather. Every syllable carried a weight like a hand placed on my shoulder. Not a threat, but a pressure that says we are connected. I said nothing. The silence seemed to rustle with disapproval. Prove it, I said, aiming the dare at both of us. Prove it isn't someone. Grant turned, pulled a small black box from his coat pocket, a key fob wired with a switch. He nodded to the door. Proof is risky, but nothing else convinces anybody. On my mark, I'll slide the outer chain so the smallest gap shows. You stand there and listen. Is this how you prove it to yourself every night? I asked. Every hour, he said. I don't sleep. Chapter 4, Crack Wide Enough. Grant unhooked one chain, leaving the thicker one crosswise, tight enough that the door only gave a fraction. He looked at me and lifted the switch. Somewhere inside the wall, I heard a relay clack and the humming deepened like a throat clearing. From that crack, cold poured out, colder than the winter beyond the walls. It didn't smell like anything I could place, which was somehow worse than rot. Smell is a map, and this place had none. The strip of light from the hall lamp caught dust motes drifting in, and I realized with something like nausea that the dust was falling upward, sucked backward, like the gap pulled more than air. The voice didn't reach for me. It did the opposite. It waited and let me come. It used patience the way some people use teeth. Son, my father said, and the word had a hinge in it, a way to open a life. Listen to me. There's been a terrible mistake. I saw something. Just a flick, a distortion in the crack that made the wall look like a heat mirage. It bent straight lines in ways no building inspector would approve. Beneath that, layered in the hiss, I heard other voices. Not many. Not a chorus. Just a woman in her 30s none of us knew crying at a bus station. A boy whispering math equations to himself to stay brave. A man with a smoker's cough singing happy birthday to someone who didn't show. Close it, I said, and Grant hit the switch. The hum throttled down. He hooked the chain. We stood listening to the ordinary hum of dead machines pretending they were still alive. You see, he said, it's not just your father. It's anyone it's tasted. You hear them because they're the bait. It takes what we love and makes it sound like home. Maybe you locked a lot of people in a room, I said, the words almost choking me. Maybe their voices travel. You can't prove a negative. You can't prove it's not human by keeping it that way. I didn't trap people, Grant said, and now the anger in his voice wasn't at me. I trapped the thing that offers people a way out of their worst day for a price they don't understand. It's smaller now, meaner. It breaks into the wires and lives behind the red lights. If you open that door, it will be everywhere again. It is patient, and we are not. The phone rang again. 3 rings, a pause, 3 rings. A pattern old enough to be a lullaby. We let it ring. Chapter 5, Night Watch. We took shifts like soldiers, if soldiers never shot and never slept. Grant turned knobs and watched needles drift. I sat in the old chair. It squeaks, unexpected company. Hours slid. The beacon on the tower throbbed through the blinds. At some point, my brain started assigning meaning to the hums. I heard vowels in the transformer. I heard a sigh in the wind that came in under the door. I don't know when Grant fell asleep, head tipped back against the cinder block wall. His cigarette burned to a pitted ash and dropped, leaving a pinhole glow like a red eye in a dark face. I put it out under my boot. The phone obliged us with another ring. I didn't pick up. Behind the door, a sound new enough to slice me open. My own voice at 11, recorded on cheap tape, asking my father if the stations talk to each other when we sleep. He had laughed and told me the truth you tell children. Of course not, son. Machines not vina. Machines don't sleep, the voice behind the door said, and this time it didn't bother with my father. It was me from now speaking backwards into then. They wait. I stood in the hall, past the racks of dust and a framed FCC license with my father's name typed on it. There was a metal cabinet of letters and locks. Some clean part of me wanted to put my hands in paper, something so analog it couldn't be haunted. I pulled a folder at random and found a sheet of notes my father had written to himself the year before he died. Beacon red, do not enter. Beacon steady, dead air reboot. Beacon flickers and whispers, pray. Close the door. Close the door. He wasn't a praying man. When I came back to the transmitter, the chain on the outer hook hung at an angle I didn't recognize. Grant was awake, watching me with eyes rubbed raw. Sometimes, he said hoarsely, nudges things. Makes you think you did them. I wrote notes and read them back, and they had different words. Don't take your eyes off the chain even to blink. I put chalk marks where the links cross. It hates being measured. How long is this your life? I asked. I wanted him to say it had only been 2 weeks, that it was new, and his mind hadn't broken, and I could bolt the door and haul him to sunlight. He didn't answer. A man can live in 2 weeks longer than some do in 70 years. Do you know why you called me? I asked. He looked away. It talks less when you're here. That doesn't answer the question. I called you because if I die, somebody has to know the rule. And what's the rule? I said, though the paper in my pocket already had it. He looked at me like I was the only person in a very large, very empty room. Close the door. Chapter 6, Release Valve. A little before dawn, when exhaustion and night trade places without shaking hands, the on-air sign glowed hard and steady. It shouldn't have had power. It looked like it had been burning for a week. The hum deepened. The phone went mad. Someone banged on the front door. 3 rapid knocks, then 2. I felt the station shift around me like a dog settling down. Don't answer the door, Grant said, standing now, the switch in his hand. He was bleeding from where his nails had cut his palms. Don't answer anything. The front door knocks came again, this time with a voice. A woman I knew vaguely from town, a bank teller with a warm smile and a laugh that used her whole neck. She asked if we were okay. She said there'd been an accident on the county road and we should call for help. Grant shook his head at me so hard I thought his skull might split. It knows the answer to every humane impulse, he said. It knows it's hard to be a person and live with yourself. What if there really is an accident? I asked. What if? The phone stopped ringing. The silence was a kind of sound I'd never heard before. It had texture. It was pulled across everything, smothering the edges. Behind the door, the hiss collapsed. I heard nothing. Not my father. Not strangers. Not my own voice. The absence pulled at my teeth like altitude. It was as though the thing had stepped backward as far as it could into whatever room Grant had built. The chain stopped trembling and hung slack like it had forgotten gravity. I think it gave up, I said. Grant's face went slack, almost relieved, then terrified. No, he whispered. It's listening. To what he didn't say. To us breathe. To how a place sighs in its sleep. To the way locks learn the hands that turn them. The on-air sign brightened until it was white and painful. The beacon on the tower went steady, not throbbing. The building seemed held in one long, shaking inhale. Open, said a child's voice on the other side of the door. My voice at 5, reciting the alphabet. Open, said my father, patient at the end of a long night. Open, said my cousin from the left side of me. But he hadn't said it. Open, said my mother from the grave, my friend from high school, the first girl I loved, a teacher I barely remembered. Open, said nobody at all. It was a command that circled and circled my head until I thought maybe it had been born in me and not placed there by another thing. I took one step toward the door. Grant lifted the switch, and then we both heard it, realer than any voice. The hinge whisper of a bolt drawn back not by hand, but by the idea of a hand. There was a physics you can't teach in classrooms. The chains weren't enough. The locks weren't locks if the thing you kept out was inside the idea of lock. I lunged, both hands on the steel, and pushed. I didn't open it. I pushed so that if it moved, it would be because I wanted it to, not because it wanted me to want it. Grant slammed the switch down. The hum went seismic. The building howled like the wind had found a flute in its bones. A spray of sparks leaped from a junction box like a dying constellation. Something gave. It wasn't the chain. It was me. All that patience, all that soft, familiar invitation had been working like water on stone. It had made a canyon under my feet while I was looking at the sky. The door wasn't opening. I was folding. The thing had learned to wear my father's voice like a coat until I reached for the sleeve without thinking. I understood then that the point wasn't to break out as much as to make me open and to hollow me until I was the door. Close it, Grant said into my ear, as if I might be far away and he needed to shout across a field. Close it, close it, close it. I don't know if the next part is true in a courtroom way, and I don't care. The chain drew itself up the last half inch. The door settled. The on-air sign went dark, the kind of dark that isn't just absence of light but a refusal of it. Morning bled up over the horizon, thin and watery, as if the sun had been delayed and was now apologizing. We didn't speak for a long time. When we did, our words were thin. Grant said he would stay until his legs gave out, and then he would crawl. He said I should go. I said I wouldn't. He said somebody had to know the rule. We made coffee thick enough to build a fence out of. We watched the chain. The world outside resumed the little noises of living, trucks on highway, birds, somebody laughing in the distance like they hadn't any right to. We sat in that old station, two men holding a door shut with rules and hope. I tell you this because you weren't here. I tell you because there will come a day when the beacon glows harder than it should, and your phone will ring from a number that looks like your childhood. You will hear your father, even if he is alive and asleep in the next room. You will want to answer because that is what you were born for, answering the people who made you. Don't. If you have to do anything, do this. Stand in front of whatever door hums in your life and make a very small choice again and again until it becomes a wall of choices. Don't argue. Don't bargain. The thing has patience, and we are learning. Close the door. If you ever wonder what happened to us, turn your radio on late one night and turn the dial through dead stations. You'll hear nothing for a long stretch. Then you'll hear a man clear his throat and shuffle some papers. You'll hear a second cup set down on a tabletop. You'll think for a second that you hear your own name. You don't. It's just me reminding myself not to forget. And if you listen long enough, it will become your reminder, too, whether you ask for it or not. Close the door. If this tale kept you with a light on, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications so you never miss a news story, hit the like button, tell me your favorite moment in the comments, and share this video with someone who will definitely listen to the wrong voice at the wrong door.